You're going to hear and read a lot about SSIS, and so in this video I want to talk about some SSIS basics. Now, when we're working with data warehouses, there's one simple rule, and that is data is there and we need it here. And the inverse to that rule is that data is here and we need it there. So you're always going to get one of those two scenarios. And when we're using a data warehouse, it's just like the term says, we're trying to warehouse our data from various places. And I've already mentioned this can be coming from other databases, old databases, text files, Excel spreadsheets, all sorts of things. And not only do we need to get data from there and put it here, data from here and put it there, but we need to make changes to some of it to make it conform to some sort of standard format or standard nomenclature when we get it to the destination. Now, SSIS is SQL Server Integration Services, and this is a platform. It's an application, if you will. It's a set of functionalities that you're going to use to build enterprise-level data integration and data transformation solutions. The quick way to say this is integration services will grab data from anywhere and move it to anywhere. And not only that, it will make all sorts of changes to it along the way. And this is a very, very powerful tool. As a matter of fact, a little bit of expertise in this tool will make you an absolute hero around the office. With integration services, you can build complex data collection, transformation, and loading scenarios. You can save them as packages, execute them later, take that package, make it part of another package, and build very, very complex steps. I've built these integration services and going all the way back to data transformation services, the precursor to this functionality, and I've seen entire screens covered with data flows, and when you kick it off, it takes it 2.5 to 3 hours to run, and it grabs data from all over the organization, drops it very cleanly and neatly into a data warehouse. Now, this whole process is often referred to as ETL. An acronym, three-letter acronym, ETL, and that means extraction, transformation, and loading. Now, when someone talks about ETL, they're talking about doing what SSIS does, but they don't necessarily have to be talking about SSIS in particular. There are a number of third-party apps out there. There are tools inside databases like Oracle's and so forth that does this same type thing as not SSIS. So just make sure out there in a generic world, ETL does not necessarily mean SSIS, but SSIS is an ETL tool. Now, data movement in SQL Server 2012 falls into two main categories. Simple, and this is where we're going to grab the data from the source, move it to the destination as is. We're not going to make any changes or modifications, transformations, none of that. We're just going to grab it where it is, move it somewhere else. And this is a good example of this. I'll show you an example later on in a little demo. We'll take data from a relational table down to a text file with comma-separated values, and then you could just as easily take that text data, load it into a relational table, and even create the relational table on the way. But that's a simple data movement. The data is copied just as is. With a complex data movement, the data requires some sort of adjustment, some sort of transformation. Once we pull it out of the source, before we drop it into the storage location or the destination, we need to change something about it based on some sort of condition, and so that would be considered a complex data movement. Now, SQL Server 2012 is going to utilize SQL Server Integration Services in various forms. The SQL Server Import-Export Wizard, which I'll talk about in a separate video. I'll show you a little bit about Import-Export Wizard and then do a little demo for you. This is going to be used for those simple data movements. Grab some data, move it from there to here. And if you're on Windows 7 or if you're on a non-Windows 8 environment, you can click on Start All Programs, Microsoft SQL Server 2012, and then just choose Import and Export Data, and that will kick off the Import-Export Wizard. Now, the SQL Server data tools are what we're going to use to do a complex data movement, and this provides a complete integrated development tool. And this thing will intimidate you the first time you see it, but you just have to go slow if you've never seen it, and you will like it, trust me. You'll get real comfortable with it really quickly, and you'll see this later on in the course as well. And we use this to create those complex data movements. Now, this runs inside the Visual Studio environment. So if you're a C# or a VB.NET developer, you've seen the Visual Studio environment and you're probably applauding right now. If you haven't seen the Visual Studio environment, you've never done any kind of development, you may find this thing just a bit intimidating the first time out, but you'll get used to it really quickly. So that's kind of the basics on SQL Server Integration Services. We're going to use it, but we're going to use it in ways that we almost never really say the words SQL Server Integration Services. There's a lot more information out about SSIS out on Microsoft's website, and I would strongly encourage you to go look at it and see what all integration services can do. It's now a server-based functionality, a lot of cool bells and whistles there. But that's just some basics to help you kind of get your head straight on integration server basics, and I'm going to take you through some of the SQL Server Data Tool basics in Visual Studio and help you get straight on some possible confusion there in the next couple of videos.